recording episode 500 with the one and only Mr. Michael J. Durant, author of In the Company of Heroes, as well as Night Stalkers. The last time I talked to you, I talked for like 5 minutes before I let you say a word because I was like having a panic attack that I was actually talking to you. So this time I'm only going to do it for 30 seconds before I ask you to please introduce yourself, sir.
All right, I'm starting the clock.
Okay. Could you please introduce yourself?
So that was your 30
yeah, that was my 30 seconds. No, I'm done. I'm ahead of schedule.
You're not just a new backdrop. You've totally changed.
Yeah.
It's good to talk to you again.
Yes,
always a pleasure to talk about things that interest me. So, looking forward to the conversation and pick up on some things we didn't talk about last time. And congratulations on the success. Sounds like your podcast is doing better. I'm glad to hear that. It's kind of hard to get traction, but it sounds like you have. So good on you.
Thank you, sir. So you were episode 95. Now we're at episode 500. And you mentioned to me just a minute ago before we started recording, the setup looks different, and the setup is very different. So what I talked to you most about last time was how in your book, while in captivity, the wisdom and the sort of mantra that you had again and again shocked me the first time I read it, and then re-listening to it this week, it still kind of kicks me in the ass that it's not what you think it'd be. It's not the hallmark, the just hang in there. We can do it. It's you have them. It's a cold, but it's an effective mindset. And it was like, don't you dare get your hope up. Don't you dare. And it wasn't don't give in to fear, but it was even at the very end when they were putting you on a stretcher and you were like, it's not until when the scoreboard hit 0, then we're good. And that had a massive effect on me. So when we spoke last time about a year ago, I was 29, living above my parents' garage, doing a podcast on this same laptop and just trying to get it going. And talking to you made me stop thinking that it's here. The thing's not here. Nose down, work. Next guest, work. And one thing led to another. And I found a guy that really loved the podcast. And he was like, I think it's fantastic. He's like, why don't you do more episodes? He mentioned the one with you. I was like, well, I'm working at a liquor store. I don't have all the time to do this. And he was like, have you thought of investors? And I was like, you give me money and let's do this thing. So did an investment thing, and I'm getting paid to do this now. So I have my own apartment, own setup, cameras, all that good stuff. Not important. The point is that your advice was extraordinarily helpful to me. It kept me sane because even then when we spoke, it was still not another... it was almost a year to the day that I moved out. So if I had known it was going to be and now I'm doing it. I'm just talking nonstop. I'm not letting you talk. Damn it. And so the point is in what other ways has wisdom like that shaped you? And in what ways would it be beneficial to individuals in my audience? Because the vast majority of us are never going to fly Black Hawk helicopters. We're not going to be in the 160th. We're not going to be successful like yourself. What other lessons have carried over into your life, into the business world, social, religious, etc., that have helped you continue to grow as a man and be successful?
Yeah, the first one that always comes to mind, because I get asked this question fairly often, is, when I was younger, I still remember struggling with a little bit of self-confidence. And I wasn't, a superstar athlete. I played sports, but I wasn't all that good. I was like third string quarterback or whatever, just the guy who's out there in the most desperate of situations when, all hope is lost and this is the only way you can fill the gap. Whether that's why, I don't know, I'm not sure. We're all kind of unique creatures, I guess, in how our brains operate and how we see ourselves and everything else. And then, I think going to flight school and obviously getting into the 160th and being forced into more challenging situations causes you to, your confidence to grow for sure. And then I think it got a steroid injection after surviving that whole ordeal. I would say that, is probably the one impact that it had to me as a person that, and maybe it's just facing death. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. All I can say is you lose some of that inhibition. You lose some of that lack of confidence. And if there's one thing I could get people to really, really grab onto and believe, and that is the whole notion of not being afraid to fail. I think so many of us hold back because we're just afraid we're going to do something that we're going to fail at, whatever it is. Every person's got their own challenges that they face, their own reasons and their own aspirations. And many people probably hold themselves back more than they're being held back by their circumstances, because either they don't like the confidence or they don't believe they can do it, or there's peer pressure or whatever else, right? That is completely gone for me. There's probably not a situation I can think of that's happened to me recently where what drove the decision is a fear of failure. That is completely gone. And I wish, and maybe it wouldn't have changed my life, but I wonder what my life would have been like had I never had that fear of failure. So, I tried to get people to understand that, it doesn't mean you can go out there and do just anything you want, but it certainly opens the envelope a little bit wider to believe in yourself. And what are the consequences of failing, right? I mean, okay, it didn't work out. I learned some incredibly valuable lessons that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. And, if it's a financial thing, maybe you lost a few dollars, maybe you spent some time doing it. But in the end, you're probably going to benefit from the failures as much as you are from the successes, maybe even more.
Yeah.
So, that's my advice is swing for the ball. You have to swing for the ball. It's like I still play hockey, right? And the shots you're not going to score on are the ones you don't take. Now, I'm a big advocate of passing. So, if we're talking hockey specifically, pass the puck, okay? But when you have a scoring opportunity, you have to shoot. And then that's kind of, where I've landed.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky. I'm a big proponent of passing, Mike Durant. The lesser-known hockey quote. I'm a big proponent of passing. Actually,
I walked off the ice 2 weeks ago because there were people on the ice that wouldn't pass, and I've never done it in my life. But I got so frustrated. It's like, this is not golf, okay? This is a team sport. You have to move the puck. I don't care how good you are. You're going to lose if you don't move the puck.
You just walked off?
I did.
Good.
It was kind of funny too. It's kind of funny because I've never done this before. I'm somewhat stable emotionally, and I walked off the rink, and of course the game's still going. So I go around the end of the ice, and I can't get out that way. So my big dramatic departure is cut short by the design of the rink. I had to turn back around and go back by the bench. And anyway, but I went back out again the following week, and everybody's moving the puck around, and we crushed the other team. So the message was sent and the message was received.
It's making me uncomfortable. It's like breaking up and walking out the wrong side of the bar. You bitch.
Yeah, exactly. You end up in the ladies' room.
Yeah, it's like it's a push, not pull. Good Lord. Well, that kind of derailed me. Yeah, no, I was. That's actually good. What are the side effects of failure? And it's really, I would say the most lessons I've learned are probably emailing guests for this podcast. People ask me, they're like, how do you get? I had on Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon. Like, I had on Robert Malone last week, the guy who invented mRNA vaccines. What no one sees is the mountains, mountains of no. Stop emailing me. How did you get this email? Sometimes it's like a respectful General Mattis or the office of Obama saying, nope, thank you, very busy. Cool. Sometimes it's Northrop Grumman telling me to stop contacting them about classified programs. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You win some, you lose some. I don't know what list I'm on now, but, it's for anybody listening at Fort Meade. I'd love for you to come on too. So with Pinnacle Solutions, so correct me if I'm wrong. You do a lot of like simulations, right?
So everyone says that, and we've tried to rebrand ourselves a little bit. We still do a lot of that, but that isn't the majority of what we do. The majority of what we do is actually flight operations, aircraft maintenance. We have a little over 500 people, and I would say 400 people of that 500 are involved in some kind of real flight operations, either flying or maintaining aircraft, or in some cases teaching people how to maintain or fly aircraft. We still do the simulation stuff, but it's just not as large a part of what we do as it was when we started the company.
All right, well, that kicked out any questions I had about that. So
no, go ahead. I can still answer them.
Obviously, there's tons of simulate. There's a great book called Skunk Works by Ben Rich, the former CEO of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. They always talk about the simulations, right? Whether it's the U-2 or the SR-71 or the F-117, and it's always failure in the simulations is success in the real world, right? But I was thinking, obviously, you did things with the SEER course, right? They came to you, the bearded one, and they wanted to, so that future captives would have more of an advantage at getting out alive. But the one thing that kind of popped in my mind was like, you could run those and let me full disclosure, as someone that's never been in a helicopter and has certainly never flown one, so I'll speak from my armchair of knowledge. I feel like you could run simulations till the cows come home, but is there an aspect of something like Elon Musk's Neuralink or anything like sensory, not just obviously simulations, they move, they're on the axes and things, but are there actual like higher tier or futuristic simulations that might, I don't know if that would be classified or something, but it would be that it's more than just, all right, we cut this fuel line, what do you do? Could you go into like, someone like you could teach where you'd almost be something like Neuralink, where it would be like, here is the adrenaline and fear of what happens. You can learn this checkbook upside down and backwards. What actually happens when the back half of the helicopter's gone and you're here and you feel like you're here?
Well, part of what you're saying is really already happening, because if you look at like the first simulator I ever flew was in flight school, and I hate to even say how long ago that was, but it was 1983, which is ridiculous to think that it's been that long. But in that simulator, it had a motion platform, which is hydraulic legs that kind of lift you off the ground, but it had no visuals. So when you're looking out the window, there was nothing there. It was just white. And then it had moving instruments. And then that was kind of the technology that had been available going all the way back to the first simulators, which were built in World War II. And it was effective in teaching you a set of tasks, which is primarily flying instruments, which means if you're in the clouds and you can't see outside. Well, as obviously as computer technology got better and you started to see high-tech animations and everything else, we started developing high-fidelity visual databases that you then could fly in. And the first time they actually put a visual on a flight simulator, it was actually a physical terrain board that flew a little camera around in this miniature land, right? And there were small trees, and if the instructor wanted to mess with you, they'd put like a rubber dinosaur out there on the terrain board, and you'd fly around the corner, and But that, and again, now that sounds primitive, but at the time it was like, wow, I can actually see outside and I'm flying. And then we started doing it with computer graphics, and today, the out the window scenes look almost real. The fidelity of the cockpit itself might as well be real. It's working exactly like the real machine works. You are getting the motion cues. Is it as realistic as the real thing? No, but it's close, and it keeps getting closer. So, we've experimented with putting smells in the cockpit because, there's a certain aspect to other senses that, the heat and all of these other things, and you get a little bit closer to reality each time you add one of those other elements in there. So I think it's happening. Are we going to plug a connector to the back of your brain anytime soon? Probably not, but eventually I would say we probably will get there, and then all the rest of the hardware goes away, and you're being fooled into thinking that you're actually in this environment. But it's getting closer. And what you probably wouldn't expect is that you see people flying high task loads where they're starting to behave like it is real because you've put them in such a situation where and there's pressure because they know their crew is looking at them, the instructor's looking at them, it's being recorded. So there's stress that comes just from that, even though they might know in their mind's eye that they're not actually in danger. It's so realistic, and there's so many things happening at the same time. I mean, people sweat, they get nervous, they panic, they do all those things. And so we're not quite to where you were describing, but we're pretty darn close, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't olfactory, isn't smell like the greatest, has the greatest ability to like bring you back to a situation, like the cologne?
I believe that is.
Yeah, because you
talked
about that. You talked about that a lot in your book. You're like the burning garbage, the smell of like fecal matter or burning tires, or not, as opposed to like the fresh cut grass or like new snow in New Hampshire. You talked about. I mean, what better way of terrifying people into training, right? If they're going to be in this environment, plug in these smells. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that thing, I think it was it called ATRAN, that radar system, or that was one of them, that they flew the camera over the little like miniature landscapes.
Oh, I am not sure actually what it was called.
Yeah, I remember watching something about that, but yeah, no, they were saying it was like cutting edge back, and they're like, oh yeah, they'd have these huge tables, and it almost looked like a little like train set, but they do pre-recorded things in there, yeah, and but yeah, so do you ever get tired of people like me reaching out and wanting to talk or ask you questions? I mean, you talked about it in the end of your book, Kissing the Stone. They're the individuals that want to put their arm around you and say, hey, look, it's Mike Durant. And there are the individuals where you can tell there's like a genuine concern. And, I don't want to be the former. I try to be the latter. I do like to talk about how your journey has helped me. Truly how it helped me, really, instead of saying the podcast is going to work one day, I just told myself, I was like, no one's coming. Just keep working. No one, working at the liquor store, people 10 years younger than me are saying, do you have any mocha and I'm just like, no one's coming. No one's coming. You just got to work through this. And then it worked. One day it just worked. And, the guy that invested in the pot, he's kind of like Farimbi. He just kind of showed up and was like, he just wanted to see me help, right? Viva Idid. And that has helped me enormously. Do you get tired? And I guess, I don't know, can you even answer that candidly? People like
so if you sent me a survey that said, what would you rather do this afternoon? Talk on a podcast or do virtually anything else? If you could do, I would probably pick do virtually anything else. I mean, I'm only doing it because, I guess in theory people can learn something from it or enjoy it or whatever. And I'm generally a reasonable person. I try to, help people out and as long as it's positive, I don't want to do something that's going to be negative, but as long as it's positive, I'm happy to do it. And the touch the stone thing is really more about when you're in the moment and there's all this attention, those are the people that are trying to touch the stone. 25 years later, the stone is gone or it's reduced to rubble, at this point.
Yeah. Well, I just, because I genuinely do think there are things to learn from you. I had on Bing West, who's the author for General Mattis, and he talks about in his book Call Sign Chaos. Mattis has a great quote: if you have not read hundreds of books, you are functionally illiterate. And he says there's only so much you can learn in the scope of your existence on this planet. If you're not, he would say when things would happen with the people under him, he would go give them a book from some Spartan commander, 20 centuries ago and say, read this. Like, what are you talking about? We're dealing with Predator or in Hellfire missiles and drones and satellites. And he was like, tactics, same tactics. Or here's this thing from Napoleon. Say, if you're not reading all of these, because what these individuals are people who live incredible lives, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Napoleon. At the very end, they write books or their memoirs, and they distill their life's information, and maybe they slant it this way or that, however they want their legacy to be. But you can get the SportsCenter highlights without having to go play the whole game. And to me, when there's someone like yourself, or like Mr. Duke, who walked on the moon. Am I ever going to walk on the moon? The sad reality is probably no. Am I ever going to fly a Black Hawk helicopter? If I'm flying a Black Hawk helicopter, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong in the world and in the United States at the very least. What there are, though, is there are lessons. Mr. Duke talked about, I said, what happens, you want to be a pilot, experimental pilot, and then you go to space, and what's the final frontier? Walking on another celestial body. Well, what do you do when you come home? And I told him that was my fear. What if I turn into Joe Rogan? And then what if there's nothing left after that? And he said when he came back from the moon, he started drinking a lot. He didn't know what to do. He said he became a terrible father. He talked about finding faith and doing work for others. And that has renewed his life. And he's like 90 now. And that had a huge impact on my life. Find faith. There's more. Be in the world, not of the world. It's so with you, I genuinely do think that there are things to learn from you. I can tell people, hey, hold on, it gets better. That doesn't mean shit. But when you can look at it with a smile and go, yeah, hold on. Like, it's darkest before the dawn. I do think there, and so I know, you'd probably be rather doing virtually anything else than a podcast. But I do think there is some actual valuable advice that, to my generation, I mean, let's be honest, millennials, we're all so messed up in the head. And at our own fault. It's not even real problems. It's just we're a bunch of brats, right? But there's more depression and suicide in this generation than ever. Sure, maybe you're not in downtown Mogadishu. Maybe you're not being held captive, but maybe you're just trying to hold on to it's going to get better. I'm going to meet a woman. I'm going to get a raise. This cloud is going to lift. And I know that. I've lost a sibling to suicide. Some people don't get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it again. I'm ranting, damn it. But is there any advice? I've got you for 2 more minutes. Is there any advice that you would offer people that you have that others don't? And I know the cliche, hold on, it gets better. But I mean, truly, someone who has stared into the pits of hell, and now you're here sitting there with an awesome salt and pepper beard, just, looking like a badass. You got a great smile, talking about hockey. People don't pass. You have a sense of humor. What would you say to them?
Well, there's a lot there. That's kind of difficult.
Answer it all now.
We went down a bunch of different roads.
Yeah, pick one, whatever you want.
Okay. Well, part of, you were talking about the highs and lows in life, and I think it goes back to what you started our conversation with. I was telling myself in captivity, don't get too excited about release, because if it doesn't happen, then you're going to be devastated. And maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my personality. I don't know, but I try not to get too high and I try not to get too low. It's the same thing with the company. It's just, if you let all the things that go wrong get to you, then you're really going to be demoralized. And I think the only way you can offset that is to not get too crazy excited about the things that go right. It's a process. You keep plugging away, and some things will go right, some things won't. And in the end, we can only control what we can control. And I think that's a big thing that people have a hard time with. They get wrapped around the axle about things that are just way beyond their control. And why worry about that? That's going to be what it's going to be. All we can do as individuals is control what we say and what we do. And if we maintain that kind of level emotional state and don't let the highs get us too high and the lows get us too low, then we'll probably be okay. Again, you went a lot of different directions there. It made me think of something our youngest sent me on Saturday night. He's a brilliant kid. He's read probably hundreds of books already in his young life. And to think that at this point in my life I can get wisdom from a 17-year-old is kind of shocking. But he sent me this quote from Albert Pike, and I can't even tell you who Albert Pike is. He said, "What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. What we have done for others in the world remains and is immortal. And I thought, oh, that's pretty profound. That should if we all lived our lives underneath that mantra, the world would probably be a great place, right? We tend to do a lot of things for ourselves and not for others. And, to paraphrase it, that's going to die with us. But the things that we do for others will live forever. So, brilliant kid.
Smarter than me. Jeez. All right. Well, unfortunately, what you just did, though, is you just committed yourself to my podcast. So on episode 1000, I'm going to email you. I'm going to be like, Mr. Durant, you can't die with this knowledge. A great man named Albert Pike once said, and that's how I'm going to guilt trip everyone in doing my podcast from now on.
How big is that microphone going to be in 500 more episodes?
500 more episodes. It's going to
triple in size.
I'm going to have 9 of them. It's going to be It's going to be 3-dimensional. You're going to plug in with Neuralink, and you're going to, maybe you don't want to smell me, but you're going to be smelling my cologne. We're going to be here. Episode 1000 is going to be from a Black Hawk helicopter, and you're going to be flying me, and something's going to go horribly wrong.
Well, how long do you think it's going to take to get to 1,000?
You came on last April. That was episode 95. So we're looking
That's a lot.
Yeah. So we threw on 405 in, 15 months? I don't know. I would imagine October of 2022, perhaps. Yeah.
Wow.
And now, you're committed to it. You can't not do it because, what did Albert Pike say?
What are you doing? Just talking to random people on the street, or
I find everyone I can. I had on Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He flew B-2 Spirits. I had on Robert Manning, the head of NASA's JPL, driving the rovers around on Mars.
Wow.
Yeah, Ken Albeck, the head of the Soviet bioweapons program. He defected to the United States in 1992. So this is all a way of me deflecting that, yes, the vast majority of it is just me with my friends being like, bro, you think aliens are real? But what I do is I get some very good guests in between, such as yourself. So when people like yourself or of your caliber ask me, who are you interviewing? I can just pull out those names. And then when they dig a little deeper, they're like, who's Rob and who's Dawn? And why do they keep coming on? Why are you guys shit-faced talking about, Marilyn Monroe? And at that point, I deflected, and by the time they realize that, they're on the podcast, and I got it, we're good, and I can scoot. Real quick, though, and I know I'm keeping you over already. Looking at things like, you're into aviation, obviously, and avionics. What do you think about all the UFO reports?
Yeah, that's funny. I went to a wedding in New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago, and most people know who I am. And they know, that I was in the military. And it's kind of interesting because people who don't live around a lot of government agencies or don't live around the military, I think have this somewhat distorted view is a nice way of saying it. It's like we're all in this secret club that knows everything. And you people out there that are not in our club, we're just duping all of you. And I was asked that question, and I don't have a clue. These are weird things that are flying around. It could be anything. It could be secret projects that we're doing. Could be secret projects that other nations are doing. Could be aliens. Could be. I have no clue. Am I concerned about it? Not really.
No, not at all. Yeah. There's nothing we can do. And lastly, do you ever look at other pilots? Do you ever maybe internally? Do you ever size them up? Be like, they couldn't do what I do.
I don't know if you can answer that. You have some level of an ego, I think.
Absolutely, healthy ego.
Yeah. Because you do have to, you have to have confidence to strap this thing on and go do what you do. I was pretty good at it. I really was.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say how well I would have done in other platforms or other missions or whatever, but I was pretty damn good in a Black Hawk, and I kind of miss it, but enjoy what I do now. And life goes on, and you evolve and adapt, and but it was a heck of a time.
Do you look at something like Marine One, like the presidential helicopters? You ever like, I could do that?
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's like flying on airlines.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to this. I mean, no disrespect, but it's compared to what we were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that is like driving to the grocery store.
All right. Lastly, and now I've kept you for 5 minutes longer, so clearly I've been a liar. And I wanted to say this to you last time, but I didn't feel I felt it was too informal, and perhaps it still is now, but now I've boxed myself in and now I have to say it. I think you did, and I'd say this in like the most informal yet respectful way. I think you did the best way of, what word am I looking for? I think you did more for Schuchart and Gordon than any Medal of Honor did. And I say this in a very informal way, in that the way you described them coming up to the helicopter, and you said, as if there was no particular rush, they just walked up and are like, "What's up, Mike?" Just looking around, like just kind of scoping things out. And that may sound disrespectful, that may sound insincere, but I've thought about it, and it's now been a year, and I've been thinking about it. Every guy, right? You ever jumped during a movie and your friends all look at you and they're like, "Hey, look at this guy." I wasn't scared. There is no like greater insult to a guy than being like blustered and scared and freaking out. Like I still do. I can't watch horror movies. I'm 30 years old. And there's no greater sign of like coolness than someone who's just, they can walk up to the hottest girl in the bar and just, know their voice isn't quavering. They're not shaking. They're just cool. The way you describe them just walking up to the helicopter in no particular hurry, not flustered, just going, "How you doing, Mike?" Just kind of like looking around. For whatever that's worth, there is no greater respect than I think the way you worded that. And I hope that doesn't come across as insincere or disrespectful. But I did want to tell you that I've thought about it for a year now, and I've interviewed a lot of Delta Force guys. And I think the one thing they all champion above everything else is like just cool as a cucumber. And so the way you worded that in your book, I know we've been kind of goofing off this whole podcast, but I did want to say that for whatever it's worth, I thought that was pretty badass.
Well, they're the ultimate warriors. They really are. I mean, we were honored to support them, and it's impossible to describe the things that those guys do, and I don't mean just the Delta guys; it's the whole community, day in and day out. Just absolutely amazing, and great Americans, and we should be very thankful that we have people like that willing to serve our whole military. But within any large organization, there's going to be those key people that really operate at a different level, and that's who those guys are.
Yes, sir. Well, I've kept you for 38 minutes, so clearly I lied about only a half hour, so I will let you go. Mr. Michael Durant, episode 500, God willing, another 500, and I will harass you for number 1,000, and you're going to be thinking I would rather be doing anything else, and I don't care. I'm going to harass you.
I'll change my phone number.
I don't have your phone number, so good luck. I'll find your son and be like, "Yo, start sending more Albert Pike quotes." I'll just make up bullshit quotes. Be like, "There's no greater duty than doing a podcast for someone." Mr. Durant, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you very much for coming on here and talking to me. I know that you literally could be doing anything else right now, but I really do appreciate it. It's badass. It makes me feel cool and important. So at the very least, thank you for that.
That's my pleasure. I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right.
God bless. God bless America. Thank you so much, Mr. Durant. Take care.
You too.
Recording stopped.